The alien queen faced death until a human fighter gave everything to rescue her. She was not feared because of weapons or armies. She was feared because she believed in peace when others believed in control. For many cycles, her empire had worked to unite different species. She opened trade routes. She stopped wars before they could begin. She listened instead of commanding, and that was exactly why some wanted her gone. The day of her capture began like any other peaceful meeting. The Queen had arrived at a neutral space station to sign a treaty meant to end a long trade conflict. No soldiers followed her. No warships surrounded her. She believed showing trust was the first step toward peace, but trust in the galaxy was often mistaken for weakness. As her ship docked, the lights inside the station dimmed, doors sealed, energy fields activated. And in a moment that would change history, the Queen of Velmora was taken prisoner. The Galaxy Watch's news traveled fast. Within hours, every major system knew what had happened. The Queen was held by a coalition that hated her influence. They accused her of interfering with natural power balance. They called her dangerous. They called her naive, but the truth was simpler. She made others feel small by choosing kindness. They announced her public trial. The result was already decided. Execution, not a quick one. Not a merciful one. They wanted the galaxy to see her fall. On dozens of worlds, people watched the broadcast in silence. Some felt anger, some felt fear, many felt relief. But no one spoke openly. No one except one human, the human nobody expected. Far from the shining halls of alien empires on a forgotten human outpost, a man named Ethan Hale sat alone in a repair bay. The bay smelled of metal and fuel. Old ship parts were scattered everywhere. His fighter, outdated, scratched, barely functional, rested in the center. The broadcast played on a cracked screen. Ethan stopped working when he saw her face. Queen Aricel, calm, dignified, hands bound in glowing restraints. The announcer spoke coldly. He remembered her. Years ago, during a relief mission, humans had sent only one ship. Most species had ignored the call. The Queen had personally come to thank them. She had stood among human workers, helped carry supplies, and spoken to them as equals. She had looked at Ethan and said, "Your kind surprises me. You help without being asked." No one else had ever said that to him. Humans were usually seen as weak, too emotional, too divided, not advanced enough to matter, but she had seen something different. And now she was alone. A decision no one approved. Ethan contacted command. They refused to answer. He sent a priority request. Denied. Finally, a short message came through. "Stand down. Intervention will cause war." He stared at the words for a long time. Then he laughed quietly. War. As if letting her die would prevent one. Ethan stood up and walked toward his fighter. The ship was old, too old for combat, too slow for escape. It had no backup, no support, and barely enough fuel to make a long jump, but it was all he had. He began powering it up. Alarms warned him of unstable systems. He ignored them. A mechanic nearby shouted, "You can't take that thing out there." Ethan didn't turn around. "I'm not going out there," he said calmly. "I'm going to her. The Queen in chains." Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Queen Aricel stood inside a cold chamber made of dark crystal and light. She was not afraid, not because she believed she would survive, but because she believed in what she had done. The guards avoided her eyes. Even her enemies felt uneasy around her calm. She stood tall, her hands bound in energy fields, her posture proud. She had been offered a chance to beg. She refused. "I regret nothing," she had said. "If peace is a crime, then I accept my sentence." In private moments, she allowed herself a single thought: "I hope the humans are safe." She did not know why she thought of them. Maybe because they reminded her of hope, small, fragile, yet strangely brave. The lone ship moves. When Ethan's ship left the human sector, no one noticed. No alarm sounded. No fleet followed. Just one small craft moving silently through the dark. He flew manually, conserving power, avoiding common lanes. His ship shook with every jump. Warnings flashed across the console. Hull stress, engine overheating, life support unstable. He turned them all off. He didn't need warnings, he needed time. As he approached enemy space, massive defense platforms came into view. Hundreds of ships patrolled the area. Any normal pilot would turn back. Ethan didn't slow down. Instead, he did something no alien pilot ever would. He flew wrong, erratic movement, sudden drops, manual thrust cuts, no predictive patterns. The enemy scanners struggled to lock on. "Impossible," one operator muttered. "No ship flies like that." But humans did, because humans didn't always fly to win. Sometimes they flew to try. The moment that changed everything inside the execution station, preparations continued. The Queen was escorted toward the central chamber. Thousands of viewers waited across the galaxy. A voice announced, "One ship, no weapons fired, no demands sent. Just one human fighter drifting closer." The commander laughed. "A human? This is a mistake." But the laughter faded when the ship didn't retreat. It kept coming, closer, closer, closer. Inside the chamber, Queen Arisel felt something strange. Hope. She looked up, and for the first time since her capture, she smiled. The alarm lights across the execution station flashed red, not because of an attack, but because something impossible was happening. A single human ship had crossed the outer defense line. Inside the command chamber, officers shouted over one another. Screens showed the small fighter drifting closer, weaving between defense grids as if it could feel where danger was coming from. "That ship should be destroyed already," one commander growled. "But it isn't," another replied, uneasy. "It's adapting." They fired warning shots. The human ship didn't respond. They fired again. Still nothing. It simply moved, slow, strange, unpredictable, like it was alive. Inside the human fighter, Ethan Hale gripped the controls tightly. Sweat ran down his face. Every alarm on the console was screaming. The ship shook violently as energy blasts passed close enough to burn the hull. He ignored them. His eyes were fixed on one thing: the station. He whispered to himself, "Just a little more." His navigation system had failed minutes ago. He was flying by instinct now, by memory, by something deeper than training. He thought of Earth, of the quiet nights under the sky, of how small humans were in the universe, and how that never stopped them from standing up. A warning flashed, engine core destabilizing. He laughed softly. "Figures." The Queen feels the change. Queen Arisel stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by guards and cold metal walls. The execution platform hummed beneath her feet. She felt it before she heard it, a vibration, a pulse through the station. Her eyes widened slightly. "That sound," she whispered, "it was not fear, it was hope." The guards noticed it too. Some looked uneasy. Others laughed nervously. "One ship cannot change anything," one of them said, but the Queen said nothing. She closed her eyes and waited. A human trick outside, Ethan made his move. Instead of firing weapons, he redirected all remaining power into the ship's shield emitters. Then he overloaded them. A burst of energy flared outward, not strong enough to destroy anything, but enough to blind sensors. For 3 seconds, the station went dark. That was all he needed. He slammed the thrusters forward. The ship smashed through an emergency docking gate, scraping metal, spinning wildly before crashing into a maintenance bay. The impact threw him forward. Blood trickled from his forehead. The ship died around him, but Ethan was alive. Barely. Inside enemy territory. Smoke filled the bay. Emergency lights flickered. Ethan pulled himself from the pilot's seat, grabbed a small energy cutter, and stumbled toward the exit. Every step hurt. Every breath burned. He had no map, no backup, no plan beyond one simple idea: find her. The station's corridors were massive, built for beings larger than humans. His footsteps echoed loudly. He moved fast anyway. He didn't care if they heard him. He wanted them to, because every second they chased him, was a second the Queen stayed alive. The Queen faces her end. Back in the chamber, the execution sequence resumed. The commander's voice echoed through the hall. Continue the process. Energy fields brightened. The Queen lifted her head. She did not scream. She did not beg. She spoke softly. If any of you remember this day, she said, remember that fear built this moment, not justice. Some guards shifted uncomfortably. Then the lights flickered again. A distant explosion shook the station. Someone shouted, "Security breach, human life form detected." The room erupted in chaos, and for the first time fear appeared on the faces of her captors. One human against a station, Ethan ran. He turned corners at random. He slid under closing doors. He ducked into vents and maintenance shafts. He was not stronger. He was not faster. But he was determined. Security drones appeared ahead. He threw a small power cell forward and fired his cutter. The cell exploded in a flash of light, not deadly, just blinding. He ran through the smoke, coughing, laughing breathlessly. "Still here," he muttered. The moment they meet again finally, he reached the central chamber. The doors were closing. He didn't think. He sprinted. Pain exploded through his body as the doors crushed his shoulders. He screamed and forced himself forward. And then he fell inside. The room went silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward him. A battered human, bleeding, barely standing. The Queen stared in disbelief. Human, Ethan pushed himself up. "Your Majesty," he said between breaths, trying to smile. "Sorry I'm late." For a moment the galaxy held its breath. The impossible choice guards raised their weapons. Ethan stepped in front of the Queen without hesitation. "I'm not here to fight," he said loudly. "I'm here to take her home." Laughter echoed through the chamber. "You are alone," the commander sneered. Ethan nodded. "Yes." Then he tapped the device on his wrist. A portal generator, prototype, unstable, one use only. The air shimmered behind the Queen, a way out but small, too small for two. The Queen realized it instantly. Her eyes widened. "No," she whispered. "You cannot," he turned to her. For the first time fear touched his face. Not fear of death, fear of failure. "I promised myself," he said softly, "that if I ever had the chance to do something that mattered, I wouldn't hesitate." Tears filled her eyes. "You will die," he smiled. "Humans do that sometimes." The choice that changed the galaxy. The guards moved in. Ethan grabbed the Queen's arm and pushed her toward the portal. She resisted. "I will not leave you." "You will," he said firmly. "Because you matter." Energy bolts flew past them. The portal destabilized. Ethan used the last of his strength to shove her forward. She screamed his name as light swallowed her. Then silence. The portal vanished. The Queen was gone, and Ethan stood alone. Surrounded, the portal closed, leaving the chamber in silence. Ethan Hale, the lone human fighter, stood alone in the heart of the enemy station. His suit was scorched, systems failing. He could feel his heartbeat in his temples. Every breath hurt. Every step was heavy. He looked at the approaching guards. He smiled faintly. "Guess this is it," he said quietly. He did not hesitate, not out of bravery but out of certainty. He had done what mattered most. The Queen was alive. That was enough. The Queen's escape. On the other side of the portal, Queen Aricel stumbled forward, her vision blurry from tears. She was safe. For the first time in hours, she could breathe freely. The portal shimmered behind her. Her thoughts raced. "He stayed. He didn't leave me." She sank to her knees, hands pressed to her chest. A wave of emotion swept over her, relief, gratitude, awe. Humans were fragile, but they had hearts that could shine brighter than any starship, brighter than any weapon in the galaxy. She remembered his words. Lights glared off his battered suit. He knew he would not survive, but he did not panic. He reached for his last tool, the suit's core stabilizer. It was risky, unstable, and might explode, but it could buy enough time for the portal to stabilize if the Queen had returned. He activated it. A soft hum filled the chamber. Energy surged around him. Guards froze, and for a moment time seemed to stretch. Ethan felt warmth and fear at the same time. He closed his eyes. If this was the end, it was the end of a life he had chosen, not a life he had been forced to give. He smiled faintly. For her, the enemy's shocked. The alien commander stared at the small human, confused. How could one being stand so calmly while surrounded by death? "Why do you not flee?" the commander demanded. Ethan opened his eyes. His voice was soft but strong. "Because some things are bigger than survival. Some things are worth more than fear. You will see that someday." The guards hesitated. Even in the face of weapons and authority, they sensed something unusual. Something no alien had seen before. Courage. Unwavering courage. The Queen returns to lead. Queen Aricel did not waste time. She contacted her fleet, her advisors, her allies. She did not hide. She did not act in fear. She acted with purpose. The galaxy watched as the Queen of Velmora, alive and determined, took her rightful place once more. She rebuilt the bridges the enemy had tried to destroy. Peace negotiations resumed. Trade routes reopened. And she told her people about the human who had saved her. His name was Ethan Hale, she announced to the stars. He gave everything so that life could continue, so that hope could survive. He showed courage that no empire, no weapon, and no fear could match. Every word carried weight. Every system in the galaxy listened. Humans gained respect. The story of the lone human fighter spread quickly. For centuries, humans had been underestimated, weak, emotional, divided. But now, across worlds, their reputation changed. The galaxy began to see them differently, not because they had conquered with force, but because they had acted with heart. They had risked everything, knowing they might fail, and yet chose to try. Ships bore images of the small human figure flying alone into enemy territory. Holograms depicted him standing in front of impossible odds. Statues were built in quiet corners of neutral planets. Every tribute shared the same message. Humans are small, but their spirit is immense. The Queen's personal tribute. Queen Aricel kept a small token of Ethan Hale beside her throne, a simple insignia from his ship, scratched and worn from the journey. She touched it every day. She whispered his name. She remembered his courage. "I will not forget him," she said to her council. Humans are fragile, yes, but they are capable of strength no weapon can measure. Ethan reminded me that hope lives in the smallest heart. Her advisors nodded, some still unsure how one human could have made such a difference, but she needed no explanation. Some lessons were learned not with words but with actions. The legacy of sacrifice. Ethan's story became legend, not just because he acted alone, but because he showed what humans could be: courageous, loyal, unwavering. Other species began to trust humans more. Alliances were formed, trade increased, conflicts were resolved with negotiation, inspired by the example of one small human who refused to turn back. Queen Aricel often thought of him. She did not mourn as many would. She celebrated. Because he had shown her and the galaxy the true meaning of bravery. He gave everything, she told ambassadors, and sometimes giving everything is enough to change everything. The final message. Years later, Queen Aricel stood on a balcony overlooking her capital. Ships passed in the skies. Trade routes shone like threads of light connecting planets. Children laughed. Peace lived. Beside her, a young Velmoran aide asked, "Your Majesty, what makes humans so special?" She smiled, pointing to a small insignia of a human fighter. "Because sometimes when the universe turns its back, a human will stand, not for power, not for glory, but for what is right, and that is a force no empire can stop." Far across the galaxy, on distant worlds, statues of a lone human stood silently, alone yet remembered. Small yet powerful, fragile yet unstoppable. And in the hearts of all who knew his story, the human spirit had finally been seen for what it truly was: limitless.